And joining me now, Republican Senator from Arkansas, Tom Cotton. Senator Cotton, welcome back to Meet the Press.
Good morning, Peter.
Do you accept the jury's verdict that Donald Trump is guilty of these 34 felonies?
No, Peter, I disagree with the jury's verdict here. A jury can only act within the constraints that a judge puts on it. And this case was rigged from the very beginning. You had Alvin Bragg, who campaigned on getting Donald Trump. You had the judge, who is a literal Biden donor, and at every turn he ruled in favor of the prosecution. But as Donald Trump said, the real verdict is going to come on Election Day, and it's going to come from the American people, and it's going to be based on things like they can't pay for their rent and put food on the table for their kids, the border is chaos, we've got war all around the world. The reason why you have this weaponization of the legal system is because Joe Biden can't defend his weak, failed record, and that the American people see through it, and they remember that Donald Trump brought peace and prosperity to this country.
So let me just clarify a couple things for our audience right now. As you know well, this was a state case. Donald Trump was indicted by a grand jury in New York. He was convicted by a jury of 12 New Yorkers beyond a reasonable doubt. They didn't seek this responsibility. Joe Biden, as you know, had nothing to do with this case, Senator. In fact, the Manhattan DA's investigation, this case began in 2018 when Joe Biden wasn't even the Democratic Party's presidential nominee. So let me ask it a different way, perhaps. Did the jury get it wrong here?
Peter, I do believe the jury got it wrong. Again, the jury can only decide based on what the judge puts in front of them. Just look at what happened in this case repeatedly. Again, you had a judge who is literally a donor to Joe Biden's campaign in 2020 so he could stop Donald Trump. He should have never been presiding over this case. He introduced evidence that was highly inflammatory and prejudicial. He didn't allow President Trump to put on certain evidence and witnesses. He never even insisted the prosecution revealed the alleged underlying crime for which Donald Trump supposedly covered up in bookkeeping entries. At every turn, the judge put his finger on the scales, practically forcing the jury to reach this outcome.
You're talking about the judge, Juan Marchand. He did give $20 to Democrats, gave $15 to Joe Biden in 2020. But the appeals court, Senator, affirmed his decision to stay on the case. And as it relates to the rules, the instructions, Trump's lawyers passed on the opportunity to argue that the charges should be considered misdemeanors in the jury instructions. Republicans are attacking the judge, the jury, the legal system here instead of letting the process play out. If Donald Trump wins on appeal, is that valid?
Well, I think there's no question Donald Trump should win on appeal.
So if he loses on appeal, would that be valid?
He's an innocent man who did nothing wrong. This judge, again, violated New York rules by giving money to Joe Biden in 2020 specifically to stop Donald Trump. I hope that the Court of Appeals in New York actually applies the law in an even-handed way as opposed to do what this judge did, what Joe Biden's Department of Justice has done, which is bending the rules at every turn solely to stop Donald Trump. The only thing Donald Trump is guilty of is being a threat to Joe Biden's reelection.
And when you talk about what Joe Biden's Department of Justice has done, Joe Biden's Department of Justice is also right now prosecuting cases against Democrats, Robert Menendez, the Democrat of New Jersey, Henry Cuellar, the Democratic representative from Texas, and Hunter Biden. The case against Hunter Biden on those gun charges begins tomorrow. Let me ask you about what we've heard from former President Trump. At the first official event of this re-election campaign, Donald Trump proclaimed, "I am your retribution." He talks about seeking revenge against his political enemies and says he will appoint a special prosecutor to, in his words, go after Joe Biden and his family. If it's so objectionable for the justice system to be, as you say, weaponized against Donald Trump, why is it acceptable for Donald Trump to campaign on weaponizing the DOJ against Joe Biden?
Well, first off, Peter, let me just go back to the points you made about prosecuting certain Democrats like Bob Menendez and Henry Cuellar. I've noticed that Joe Biden's Department of Justice tends to target the Democrats that are critical of Joe Biden. Bob Menendez criticizes him for his weak Iran policy.
So he's weaponizing it against people that don't like him.
Henry Cuellar criticizes the president's immigration policy. They're investigating the mayor of New York because he has criticized Joe Biden's immigration policy.
How about his own son, Hunter Biden? The case begins tomorrow.
Hunter Biden is guilty of so many crimes he can barely even keep track of them, unlike Donald Trump, for whom they never even revealed the alleged crime that he supposedly tried to cover up.
So just to be clear, though, if he was weaponizing the Justice Department, wouldn't he want to keep any case away from his own son?
He was forced, his own Justice Department tried to rig a settlement They were forced by a judge asking questions of the prosecutor and Hunter Biden's defense attorneys.
But wouldn't he get rid of it completely? Why would he weaponize it against his own son and just get rid of the case altogether, by your argument?
Well, because he's going to pardon his own son after the election. And that's what you should ask Joe Biden at the White House sometime is, do you commit to not pardon Hunter Biden after the election?
Let me go back, Senator, to my initial question, which is if it's so objectionable for the justice system, to, as you say, to be weaponized by Joe Biden against Donald Trump, why is it appropriate for Donald Trump to campaign on weaponizing it against Joe Biden?
Donald Trump has said that his so-called retribution will be success at the ballot box.
Well, he also said an eye for an eye, so he hasn't just said it's success.
In 2016, when so many people insisted that Hillary Clinton should face criminal charges for doing exactly what Donald Trump was wrongly accused of doing, which is mischaracterizing legal expenses as something else. Remember, she paid for the dirty Russian dossier. They characterized it as legal expenses. She paid a fine to the FEC. Donald Trump specifically said he would not prosecute Hillary Clinton because that's not what we do in America. What the Democrats have done in New York is like something that would happen in Pakistan or Brazil. It's something that America would sanction another country for engaging in election interference.
Locking up Hillary Clinton.
And he said after the election that that's not what we do in America. If New York was
a foreign... But he campaigned on it and then after said he wouldn't do it? I guess let's get back to the question about...
Peter, if New York was a foreign country, America would sanction them for trying to target, through weaponization of the legal system, their political opponents and rigging election outcomes.
Are you okay, then, with Donald Trump saying he will weaponize the DOJ against Joe Biden?
He has said repeatedly that this should never happen. It shouldn't happen to him. It shouldn't happen to Hillary Clinton.
But he's campaigning on that very basis.
Peter, we've been down this road before. In 2016, people called for Hillary Clinton to be prosecuted. She probably deserved it. Donald Trump said that's not what we do in America to someone who loses an election like Hillary Clinton.
So you disagree with Senator Marco Rubio, who says he should get even?
Donald Trump has said, as recently as last month, that his retribution will be success. Success at the election and then restoring the peace and prosperity that he brought to America for 4 years that Joe Biden has destroyed.
Since Thursday's verdict, there has been a spike in violent rhetoric online directed toward the jurors in particular, including calls to publish their addresses, physical attacks. Will you condemn those threats?
Well, Peter, I don't know what obscure websites that you've gone to.
Well, no, this is from Truth Social. It's not an obscure website. An individual says, I hope every juror is doxxed and they pay for what they have done. May God strike them dead. We will on November 5th and they will pay. You can condemn that threat, can't you?
Again, I will always say that violence has no place in our politics. Again, I don't know what obscure account you found on social media that said that.
Well, it's on Truth Social. It's on his website.
But I'll say this. Where's the justice when you had Democratic street militias marching outside the homes of Supreme Court justices, carrying flex cuffs and hooligan tools so they could break into the home of justices and try to assassinate them? Exactly one person has been charged when every single person who were trying to intimidate those justices violated federal law. Why isn't the Department of Justice using the same techniques on those Democratic street militias that they're using for every grandma who wore a red MAGA hat within a country mile of the Capitol?
So we could agree that those threats should be condemned on all sides, correct? Let me ask you about your certification of the 2020 election. You did certify the 2020 election results after Donald Trump lost. Will you commit to certifying the 2024 election results no matter who wins?
Well, Peter, I don't think Congress has the constitutional authority to reject electors that have been certified by a state. I will accept the results of the election and certify them if it's a fair and a free election.
Who gets to decide if it's fair?
Well, ultimately, it is up to both. Ultimately, it's up to the voters. But any candidate of any party has a perfect right to pursue legal remedies if they believe there's been fraud or cheating in an election, just like Al Gore did in dozens of lawsuits in 2000. That is perfectly appropriate. And then the states certify the electors. I don't think Congress has the authority to reject those electors. I also think every candidate has a right to wait until the election is conducted to ensure it's been conducted in a fair and free fashion.
And that's different than what Donald Trump thought. Let me show some of your words from January 6th of 2021. You said, quote, "It is past time for the president to accept the results of the election and quit misleading the American people." That was more than 3 years ago, Senator. Donald Trump still has not accepted the results. Does it still bother you that he is, to use your words, misleading Americans?
No, that disagreement was about what could happen in Congress on that day. Once the states have certified electors, I don't think Congress has the authority to reject those electors. I wouldn't want Chuck Schumer and Kamala Harris next year to reject Donald Trump's winning electors. This is about Congress's authority. I agree with Donald Trump that there were many irregularities in the election, including Democratic cities and states changing their rules and practices in the weeks leading up to the election, or for that matter, networks like yours trying to suppress the Hunter Biden laptop because 51 Democratic intelligence operatives colluding with the Biden campaign put out a letter saying that.
To be clear, I'm talking about your words here, so I just want to get to the heart of it. What did you mean when you said that he was misleading Americans?
Look, we had a disagreement about what could happen that day. I don't think Congress has the constitutional authority to reject electors, and as a practical matter, it was never going to happen.
What was he misleading the American people about, though?
That any vote we took that day was going to make a difference about certifying those electors. I don't think Congress has the constitutional authority.
Is he still misleading the American people?
And I don't think Nancy Pelosi's House was ever going to do that.
Is he still misleading the American people?
Look, he has said that the election had many irregularities and there was fraud and cheating on the way up to it. I believe that as well. We had a disagreement about what could happen on that vote on that day. It's not going to matter next year, in my opinion, because he's going to win in such a huge landslide with more than 300 electoral votes that there won't be any dispute at all.
Another place you had a disagreement on that day, January 6th, you called the people who attacked the Capitol insurrectionists and said, quote, they should face the full extent of federal law. What message is Donald Trump sending by promising to pardon these people in a second term?
Well, Peter, I use the same term to describe the BLM rioters and the Antifa rioters from the previous summer. I've long said that anyone on January 6th who attacked a law enforcement officer or damaged public property should face legal consequences. But
Donald Trump's not making that distinction, though. So should he pardon those individuals as well?
He absolutely has. There are
hundreds. No, he hasn't,
yes,
sir.
He has,
He has
Peter.
not.
There are hundreds, Peter. There are hundreds of people who were at the Capitol or even outside the Capitol that day who did not attack a law enforcement officer, who did not damage public property, who are facing more time in jail than the crimes for which they are charged, many of whom are about to have their convictions erased by the Supreme Court.
To be clear, though,
compare the techniques the Department of Justice used to pursue the BLM rioters or these Democratic street militias outside the Supreme Court.
Let me get back to the question, though. You disagree with the president on this. The president to Time magazine in the last several weeks said that he would consider pardoning all of them. You would disagree with that,
Well, there's
correct?
a difference between saying he would and saying he would consider it. I think
should he pardon all of them by your standard of what's appropriate?
Peter, he should evaluate each case on the merits,
including the four who were convicted of seditious conspiracy,
which is what he did when he was president the first time. And anyone who is charged with silly misdemeanors about parading on public grounds without a permit, who did not attack a law enforcement officer, who did not damage public property, their pardon should be considered. In many cases, I would say it should be granted because many of them, frankly, are about to have their convictions or their charges erased by the Supreme Court in just a few weeks.
To be clear, you're making a distinction that Donald Trump has not publicly made. Let me talk about your future. You are reportedly on Donald Trump's short list of possible running mates. Would you accept if Donald Trump asked you?
Well, Peter, Donald Trump is going to make this choice. I suspect only he knows who's on his short list.
Has he spoken to you about this?
I have not talked to the president or his campaign about his vice presidential selection or any position in his administration.
Would you accept it if offered?
Peter, any great patriot, if offered a chance to serve our country by the president, would have to consider it seriously. But what I'm focused on, like the president, is making sure that we win this election in November, and I want to help him govern successfully to restore the peace and prosperity that he brought to America for 4 years that Joe Biden has destroyed.
Senator Cotton, we appreciate your time and your perspective. Thanks for joining us on Meet the Press.
Thank you, Peter.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.